Feds were in 2002. Let's say the let's say somewhere there in September in 2002, September there, the basis, the federal funds target rate was 1.75%. All right, and they put it 2003, they lower it to 1%. In these times, the Federal Reserve basically is doing what you call a ease money basis. All right, people can have access to money from the Feds, or the banks per se have access to money from the Feds at 1%, and then they can parlay that money throughout the economy and make a percentage markup on it, say 300, 350. But this is not what represented here, so don't be confused. Okay, so good. All right, let's look at what causes the let us look at the rate changes which caused the real estate market to crash, all right, up in 2008. All right, because you can look at the changes made in the federal funds rate. All right, so we know in 2002 it was 175. We know in 2003 they lowered to 1%. We know in 2004 they began to raise that from 1% to 1.5%. We know in 2005 they raised that, all right, over let's say a 1 year period, to 3.5%. all right, so it becomes more expensive now for persons who had borrowed loan previously assigned at 1.5 or 1%. all right, it depends on how long they're paying it off for, and we know these things go more than for 5 years for persons who are paying off loans. You know what I'm saying? Only perhaps cars would perhaps go for somewhere like, 60 months, which is 5 years, and so on. But not only cars, the important thing is really houses. What caused the real estate debacle is the Federal Reserve rising interest rates. This really caused it, So therefore, as rates are risen, so is their monthly payments. Because once you sign on a loan agreement, on a mortgage statement, that you're gonna pay back the interest rate that you had signed to at the time you take the loan out, what happens is that the bank has a trick up their sleeve, which they have reflected in what they call the ARM, adjustable rate mortgage. So what happened is that as the Feds, the Federal Reserve Bank, central bank in New York, has the Board of Governors, when they agree to raise interest rate, these are the effects that they will create in the economy, and this is how they rob people in the economy, and this is how people default on loans, and they default on their property, and they default, and let's say business people that like to borrow money to buy a property, develop a commercial entity somewhere. Let's say the interest rate raised up to a point where it now becomes 5.25%. Let's say it happens in 2007. Okay, what this rate does now, since persons who had taken out previous loan when interest rates are low, they would have to force to pay higher monthly payments because these rates automatically change, and it's justified by the agreement that they signed to of the ARM, the adjustable rate loan, or the adjustable rate mortgage. All right, the word mortgage does not apply only to persons who purchase a house and hire purchase. All right, it applies to anything. A car, a land, anything that you use, long as you trust something and you does not pay for it in cash, totally outright, and you have to borrow money or go into debt for it. Basically put, when you go into debt, you actually take on leverage. Alright, leverage is debt, and once you take on leverage allows you the ability to use the funds that you borrow to pay off whatever you're going to pay off, and then if you can, before the times run out, you can pay off the leverage, which is pay off the debt with the interest rate that is applied to it. Then you get out of leverage. Once you get out of leverage, you get out of debt. Alright, but once you leverage yourself, that simply means you entrust yourself with debt. And once the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, these are the effects that will ripple and make themselves felt through the economy, and persons that have debt obligations in the form of loans, borrowed mortgage for homes, car payments to be made, credit card payments to be made. These rates will be increased also, and it will be reflected in your monthly installments that you will be made to these different creditors to whom you owe your debt. Alright, so what caused the real estate debacle in 2008, somewhere there, it's because the Feds had raised rates from their lowest to their highest of what they've been in about, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in about 6 years. All right. So therefore, that is what happened. All right. You can know when a problem happens in the economy because you can tell where the pressure points are in the economy when you have a crippling effect. You can see it indicated here when the Fed began to lower interest rates from 5.25% to 2%. It's the same here for September, 5.25% to 2%. See, and then they go below the 2008 mark of 2% down to 0.25%. And see, they continue with it. They continue with it all the way up to 2012. Alright, so I think this too also is going to be trailing, alright, and come all the way down to December, because the economy is in such a tailspin, because the Federal Reserve is the problem, and they are the ones who set it in motion that way, and the Congress that passed previous legislations and previous bills of a financial importance or financial disimportance to favor the banks against the people of the United States of America. So this is what happened to persons when they purchase anything as an higher purchase, or they leverage themselves, or they take out a loan and they have an interest rate which they had signed to, and it has an ARM adjustable. The best thing for a person to shield themselves from shocks as these in interest rate hikes by the Feds is to sign a loan agreement that, if it's not there in the agreement, ask the bank or the creditor for it, that you want to sign at this interest rate to be a fixed interest rate, and that there will be no modification in the rate over time, alright, as the years go by when you begin to pay your loan off. Alright, if they cannot give you that, do not sign and take their loan. In every business agreement or any business agreement or contract or something, always read the contract and look for wiggle room. Another politically business oriented conscious way you can call it is options. Look for options. Look for areas where you have if they have ARM there, look for also fixed rate, alright, so that you can shield yourself against any rate hike when the Federal Reserve began to change rates. Alright, so these are the problems which cause persons who had previously signed on a adjustable rate mortgage, almost everyone do it, alright, since they are going to borrow the money and to pay off for their home they have. Alright, so when the rates rise, this is what happens to them. They have to be forced to pay a higher monthly installments, alright, or higher monthly payment from their paychecks, and their paychecks did not raise. Alright, so it hampers their ability to pay consistently as the monthly installment goes up because of the raise in interest rate that the Federal Reserve had raised, and the banks follow suit as well. Alright, so this is wrongdoing done by the Federal Reserve and Congress and the member banks that is in this theft. It's robbery, and it's not to be continued. Alright, and persons who are going in the economy to borrow money, you have to be able to do your own research and homework and look before you leap. Alright, do not be a jackass. Alright, do not be a jackass that is more stupid than yourself of being a jackass, because when you be that, is like you become the cart that is put before the jackass, and as you know, that is a jackass that pull a cart. So do not put the cart before the ass, alright, because you're not stupid than a jackass. Alright, you're no more stupid. Alright, so be wise and be conscious in your financial deliberations in these things that you have to do within the economy in these times. Alright, because banks are there to make money, and they are there to use whatever means necessary to increase their profit margin or increase their bottom line. Alright, so is the Federal Reserve, because they are bankers too, and they are money changers. Alright, so therefore they are not being honest in all the things that they do. They're only the only thing that seems to be honest is that when they collect on their side of the deal, that's what seems to be correct for them. Alright, so they will even continue this unrighteousness or this wrongdoing. It's robbery, it's robbing people, it's doing a lot of evil to people. So people must be wise as to what they are doing in these things, so that they don't easily be taken. Alright, so when interest rate is being risen by the Feds to 5.25%, this is what happens. Alright, to individual households who had purchased their property in terms of a mortgage, and they had make previous down payments. What worse is the amount that they perhaps put down, not knowing what they're going to be in for, you know. So they be taking for a ride when the bank get their down payments, you know, and it's all over for them. People take their life savings and talk about they're investing in a house, and they call this house that they're investing in the form of a in the form of a mortgage. They call it an asset. An house is not an asset. An house is an expense. Because when you have an house that is paid off for and you lease that house out to get money, the income coming from that house now is income coming from an asset. Because an asset is something that is less of liability, or something that you minus a liability from. A liability is something that you owe to other person. And if you have a house, you cannot possibly owe it to yourself, because you're making payments to other people. Okay, so it's not an asset to you, it's an asset to other people, because it generates income for other people. So what happened is that a lot of people are deceived to believe that you're making an investment in an asset and that you have an equity there. You do not have an equity, because the equity is obsolete to you, because you do not have the house generating the cash flow that you are paying. It's not coming to yourself. Alright, so you see, a lot of people are deceived when it comes to conventional thinking and conventional politically correct thoughts, and how they are being propagated through the mainstream media, you know, to say that your car is an asset. Oh, you have equity in your car, you know. Your house is an asset. You have equity in your house. It's not. All right, it's not.